The Lord will give his people recompense. Shalom. First and foremost, giving all praises, honor, glory, respect, and blessings to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rachakwadash. Salutations to the Lord's elect on the four corners of the earth, pushing this truth and sincerity while patiently waiting for Yahweh Shai's return. And double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone, which have taught us everything we know through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. And this is going to be a lesson based on the Lord giving his people recompense. And the reason why I say that is because from the time that the Edomites came into power, starting with the Greeks, all the way down to their late descendants, which called themselves, white Americans, or white Europeans, white Russians, they call themselves Jewish, and they are not, as the Holy Scriptures say. Ever since the time of the Greeks, the biblical Edomites have been giving us trouble. And a matter of fact, according to the book of Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter and the 15th verse, trickling down to the 68th verse, the Lord said that the curses of Deuteronomy chapter 28 verse 15 all the way down to 68 would come upon the Israelites, which are the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native Indians, if they did not keep the Lord's laws, statutes, and commandments. Okay? And a part of those curses will be that in the last days, before the last days, which the last days represent, the final times of Edom's rulership. Because who has control over the earth today? The wicked. And that's starting with the so-called elites, which are biblical Edomites too, by the way, trickling down to the rest of their nation of people. So, the last days represent the final times of Edom's rulership before he is taken down. So, the Israelites, the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native Indians, they went into slavery, starting with, Europe, because the first batch of slaves came from Europe and arrived in Jamestown, Virginia in the year 1619. And there they served hardcore slavery. So by the time the batch of slaves that was taken from West Africa was being brought over here on slave ships, by the way, one of them being named Jesus, by the time the slaves from Africa got over here to the Americas, there was already slavery going on here in America, because the so-called North American Indians were already slaughtered. They were taken down and put into subjection. The Puerto Ricans taken down, which the Puerto Ricans come from the tribe of Ephraim. The so-called North American Indians come from the tribe of Gad. The Seminole Indians come from the tribe of Reuben. Okay, the Aztec Indians come from the tribe of Issachar. You also had some Aztec Indians that lived in South America, okay, for the tribe of Zebulon. the Guatemalans and Panamanians. At one point, you even had some Guatemalans and Panamanians that was dwelling over here in North America. Okay, but when the conquistadors and the Spaniards, who were Edomites, by the way, those were not conquistadors or Spaniards. They only changed their names to hide themselves from their biblical nationalities. But when the conquistadors and the Spaniards and the English Dutch mercenaries came over here, what did they do? They made multiple treaties with the so-called natives of this land, talking about the Puerto Ricans from the tribe of Ephraim, the Panamanians and Guatemalans from the tribe of Zebulon. Okay, we're talking about Mexicans from the tribe of Issachar. And we're talking about the so-called native or North American Indians from the tribe of Gad, and the Seminole Indians from the tribe of Reuben. These are the so-called natives of America. When the conquistadors and the Spaniards realized that there were natives living over here on this land, they made peace treaties with the so-called natives of this land, and then they turned around and commit murder, murdering the so-called natives of this land, their children, their wives, and all kind of atrocities went on. Okay, the so-called natives of this land was being hung. Some of them was being lynched, thrown into sharpened spike pits made out of wood. A lot of the so-called natives of this land was running from their enemies butt naked through forests, and you had conquistadors and Spaniards sitting on horses chasing right after our people. A lot of our people were being tortured. The pregnant women of the so-called natives of this land was being slit open. The babies was taken out of the pregnant women and then stumped on the ground or dashed against the stones by the conquistadors or the English Dutch mercenaries. But it gets even worse for the slaves after the slaves from Western Africa is brought over here. Okay, when the slaves from Western Africa is brought over here, you know, they get their ankles chopped off, well, from running from the slave masters. They get their hands chopped off. Okay, but both of their hands get chopped off. A lot of them were castrated. Okay, the rods, their balls were chopped off. Okay. No, a lot of them was brutally beaten with whips. Okay. A lot of our people worked on empty stomachs. And if they were to pass out or faint in the middle of the field, the slave master would go out there and beat the slave. Okay. The slave woman was taken from her husband. Okay. And if her husband tried to help, guess what? He was beaten, and then he was commanded to go back to work. And you know what they would do with the slave woman? While the slave, while the slave was out there in the field working, he would hear his woman. The slave master will open the window to his house, just so the slave could hear the slave master having sex with his woman, raping his woman. His woman will be up there screaming. Okay, for a couple of minutes you'll hear her, you know, screaming or whatnot, and then after a short period of time, you didn't hear her screaming no more. So you already knew what was going on. Okay, he was probably beating her, getting her to sit still, so she could stop resisting. You know, So after it got quiet, you already knew what was going on. Okay, the slave master already ejaculated inside of her. And then after he was done with her, he'll send her right back out in the field to continue her work. And there was a lot of slave women who had husbands, and the slave master knew, but he still continued to take his slave's woman to go have sex with her. And again, he'll have the window open, you know, and it got so bad to the point to where, you know, because one of the brothers down in LA was talking about it, you know, it got so bad to the point to where, you know, the slave woman just stopped resisting. The slave, you know, for a couple of days, he would hear, the slave would hear his woman getting raped. You know, she'll be crying, screaming, you know. But like a week or a week and a half later, whenever the slave woman was taken into the house, guess what? You didn't hear her crying or screaming no more. You heard her moaning, okay? Because she got used to being put into submission. So the ugly slave woman was left to the slaves, but the slave women that was beautiful, they was taken from the slave master, okay? And guess what? She was raped by the slave master. Okay, and guess what? The Edomites was doing this to us in slavery. Okay, if you was an Israelite, right, an Israelite slave during the time of slavery, they would take your children from you. You know, and it's like if I'm going on a rant, I'll be starting the lesson soon. But you know, if you was an Israelite slave, right, and you had children, yeah, I'm talking about 4-year-old, 5-year-old children, the slave master would literally take your 4-year-old, 5-year-old children away from you, whether if it be male or females, and they will be sold off as sex slaves to other slave masters. So once your children was taken away from you, you never got to see your children again. Okay, your 4-year-old, your 5-year-old child was being a slave, was being a sex slave to somebody else. If he or she was not a slave to somebody else, they was a sex slave to somebody else in a totally different state. You know, in a totally different state. You know, our people was tied to trees. They was brutally whipped. They had something called bucket breaking, where the male slaves was raped by the slave master in front of other slaves. Okay, and we can't forget about Derby's dose, where they would have one slave, you know, squat over the mouth of another slave, while his mouth was forcibly open, and then the slave would literally take a dump in the other slave's mouth. And then they had some kind of mechanism where the slave's mouth was forced to be shut. That way he'll just be sitting in the shaft, you know, gagging, trying to throw up but can't, and he'll just be sitting there gagging for hours. Why? Because the guy was hungry. He was hungry, so he ended up picking a couple of sugar canes in the field and eating it, and he got the slave master found out about it. And that's where you get Derby's dose from. You know, there's all kind of unrighteous things that happened to us during the time of slavery. But guess what? The Lord said that He's going to give us recompense for all those things that's happened. Okay, and even to this very day, these Edomites are still abusing their power. You know, they're forcing you to work days that you don't want to work. Let's just to say if you have 4 days, Well, guess what? Your Edomite slave master, he says that, well, you got to work this day, because if you don't work this day, then all the other days that you work is going to be taken from you and given to somebody else who wants to work 5 days. So, hey, brothers, you brothers in this truth, recompense is coming. Revelation chapter 13 verse 9. If any man have an ear, let him hear. Verse 10. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. Who led our nation into captivity? The Edomites. Okay, and a matter of fact, we are still in Esau's. We are still in captivity under Esau's rulership to this very day. Okay, we're still in his rulership. Okay. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here's the patience to the faith of the saints, right? And during the time of the conquistadors and Spaniards, those kind of things were actually going on. Okay? How they was killing our people off with musket guns, cannons, Gatling guns. You know, they were spreading diseases. We was dying out from plagues and viruses. So the Lord's going to give us recompense for all that. Okay? Matter of fact, let's go over here to 2 Thessalonians chapter 1 verse 6. Okay, seeing it is a righteous thing with God, who the world ignorantly calls God, his name is Yahweh. God is just a title. Okay, guess what? God has a name. His name is Yahweh, and his son's name is Yahawashi, who the world ignorantly calls Jesus. Seeing it is a righteous thing with Yahweh, Bashem, Yahawashi, to recompense tribulation to them that trouble you. To recompense, to pay back. The word recompense means to pay back. To pay back tribulation to them that trouble you. Verse 7. And to you who are troubled, rest with us, when Yahweh Shai shall be revealed from heaven with his mighty angels. Okay? Because Yahweh Shai is coming back. And our liberation and our freedom from this captivity starts with when Yahweh Shai makes his second return. Okay? So Yahweh Shai is going to come back in flaming fire, taking vengeance on them. Oh, wait. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. And to you who are troubled, rest with us, when Yahweh Shai, when the Lord Yahweh Shai shall be revealed from heaven with his mighty angels in flaming fire, taking vengeance on them that know not Yahweh, and that obey not the gospel of our Lord Yahweh Shai Hamashiach. Okay? And that includes you heathens too. And the top heathen on the planet are the Edomites. Why? Because the Lord gave them the most power on this side in this generation. That's why outside of America, what country has the second most power on the planet? Russia. Okay? Russia is ruled and controlled by Edomites. Just like how Russia is ruled, just like how America is ruled and controlled by Edomites. Now let's go from there to the book of Jeremiah, chapter 30, verse 16. Or is it the 40th chapter? Okay, Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 16. Therefore all they that devour thee shall be devoured, And all thine adversaries, every one of them, shall go into captivity. So we're being devoured right now. By who? The Edomites, as well as these heathen nations. These other heathen nations, such as the Arabs, the Africans, the East Indians, the Chinese and Japanese people, the Hawaiians. Okay? Well, we're being troubled by them as well. Well, we're being devoured by them as well. They devour us by coming into our neighborhoods, setting up their little corner shops and making money off of us, selling our women hair and things like that, you know, selling our people alcohol such as brandy, you know, gin. You know, these East Indians, they like to sell us curry and alcohol. The Arabs like to set up their little corner stores in our neighborhoods. Like, you're not going to catch an Arab shop in these wealthy or rich Edomite neighborhoods. It's only going to be in our neighborhoods where they set up their shops. Okay, the scriptures speak about the dogs that came and licked Lazarus' wounds in the book of Acts. Okay, licking his wounds, meaning they only made our affliction worse, because Lazarus represents who? Israel. It says, and they that spoil thee shall be a spoil, and all that prey upon thee will I give for a prey. Okay, so we're being preyed upon by every single one of these heathens. You know, these East Indians, they're like setting up their little gas stations around here. Ishmael does it too, man. Okay, Chinese and Japanese people, they like setting up their little cat and dog shops. Okay, killing cats and dogs and then selling them to you under the guise of them being chicken. When it's not really chicken, it's really, the meat really comes from cat and dogs. So this kingdom is through, man. Okay, the Lord's going to do something to this kingdom. Let's go to Lamentations chapter 4 verse 21. I'm going to just do this. Lamentations chapter 4 verse 21. Okay, it says, rejoice and be glad, O daughter of Edom, that dwellest in the land of Uz. The cup represents slavery, also shall be passed through unto thee. Thou shalt be drunken and shalt make thyself naked. Now let's go from there to the book of Revelation, chapter 18, verse 6. It says, reward her even as she rewarded you. Right, and how did these Edomites reward us? They rewarded us with slavery, these different police shootings. Okay, they rewarded us by using by getting the government to spray chemicals in the air. You know, put chemicals in our water, abominable things in our water, by passing these wicked laws and legislations that only oppress us even more. You know, it says, reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her double according to her works, and the cup which she had filled to her double. So you Edomites, as well as you Arabs, you Chinese and Japanese people, as well as you Africans, you Hawaiians, Okay, you Easterners and you Arabs, prepare to be recompensed. Okay, because the Lord is going to give us power so we can get our recompense. And as a matter of fact, let's prove that. Ezekiel chapter 25, verse. I'll just type this in. Let's go ahead and view the chapter. Okay, here we go. Ezekiel chapter 25, verse 12. Thus saith the Lord, Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. Okay, because that Edom have dealt against the house of Judah by taking vengeance and have greatly offended. Right. Now all you got to do is look at what the house of Edom is doing concerning these different police shootings. You know, all these unjust killings. It says, and revenge himself upon them. Right, because that's exactly what Edom did. Okay, he revenged himself upon us. Okay, and revenging himself upon us. That really started with when they came into power, starting with the Greeks. That's when they really started to revenge themselves upon us. Because there were a lot of Greek figureheads that put us through some serious tribulation and troubles. Okay, like Antiochus Epiphanes, but there were others too. It wasn't just Antiochus. The Seleucid Empire period, man, we was going through some serious stuff. Even during the Ptolemaic Empire, okay, Jake was going through some serious trials and tribulations, being forced to worship Ptolemy's son. What's his name? Serapis Christus. Okay, so it says, therefore, thus saith the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, I will also stretch out mine hand upon Edom, and I will cut off man and beast from it, and I will make it desolate from Teman, and they of Dedan shall fall by the sword. So they of Dedan shall fall by the sword. Okay, now it gets even better. Let's continue to read. It says, and I will lay my vengeance upon Edom by the hand of my people Israel. So the Lord's going to use his people to get his vengeance upon the nation of Edom. And that's starting with the so-called elites of this society, the biblical Edomites, trickling down to the rest of their nation, the people, the so-called white people. Close these blinds real quick. Okay. And they shall do in Edom according to mine anger and according to my fury, and they shall know my vengeance, saith the Lord, Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. With that, I'm going to say Shalom is on to the next one.